Welcome back to this afternoon's session of Disruptive Seasons Spring 2022, where we have another incredible lineup. As always, please share, like, and comment. We're going to start with Austin Pearson, a client director at ScienceLogic.
Hi, my name's Austin Pearson. I'm a client director at ScienceLogic, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about transforming IT for today's digital operations, which is something that I've been involved with customers for over 20 years now in helping them modernize their IT operations. Now, why is this important? Well, today we're trying to get to speed with digital. How can you get to market quicker than you are today? How can you innovate, and how can you do that without blowing up your costs, right? And when I talk to IT leaders, there are three things that really stop them transforming their IT operations into the speed and cost that they need to be competitive today. That first thing is the cost of day two operations, right? That cost is huge because today operations in IT is so much more complex than it was previously. You know, you go back 10, 15 years, you had physical servers in a data center. Each application sat on a different server. You knew where things were. Today, to get to speed, we've moved things to the cloud, and we're still running things on premise that move around all the time. Things that are spun up like containers that might be there for a few minutes or a few hours, and then they come back down again. And there might be hundreds or even thousands of them in some cases. You know, and even in an on-premise situation, you know, something as simple as VMware is moving around between data centers, and things are coming and going all the time, and we're trying to turn things off as much as we can to keep costs down. And that means it's a lot harder to find a problem when things go wrong, and therefore it costs you a lot more people to be able to do that. The second problem is, of course, that leads to a bad customer experience. With digital today, we all want an immediate fix when something goes wrong. We just want to pick up our phone, we want to download the app, we want to go on a website, and we get a car insurance quote. If we can't do it, we move on to the next one. So if it takes us hours or even days, and there's been some recent examples, the likes of British Airways and Santander, that have both had some pretty bad outages in the last couple of years, then the customer experience is bad, and they will then move on to somebody else. So we need to try and work out how we fix that problem. And of course, the biggest kind of problem with all of this is that we don't have the right data in IT to be able to give our operations folks the information they need to be able to fix that problem quickly and improve that customer experience, because we have so many different tools and so many different silos. And those tools have been great over the years, but these days they're not what we need to deliver the best digital experience. So let me give you a couple of examples where we've worked with clients recently and helped them really deliver some huge improvements in IT operations. So there's 4 examples on the screen. I'll pick on Cisco first because I'm sure we've all used Cisco equipment at some point in our life. So Cisco's managed service sits behind a lot of the biggest businesses in the world, runs their network, contact center, things like that. When Cisco came to us, they were looking to transform their business digitally, push their partners and their customers to transact digitally with them, and their aim was to be able to transact $200,000 a minute through their website and digital channels if they could at their peak times. So to be able to do that, we found that it took them on average 2 hours and 20 minutes to fix things when something went wrong for Cisco somewhere in their enterprise. And that's actually not too bad a fact compared to a lot of enterprises that I've worked with, right? But at $200,000 a minute in downtime, that waiting 2 hours 20 to fix something clearly isn't going to work. So what we've helped them do is simplify that tool chain, that I'll talk more about in a minute, from 60 tools down to 4, and then we automated a lot of what level 1 and level 2 did, which meant that they could take a lot of FTEs out of that, repurpose them elsewhere in the business, and that's helped them save $14 million annually, and they're now down to 6 minutes is their average time to resolve issues in their new digital operations. And in fact, when I spoke to them a few weeks ago, they told me that 85,000 incidents, ScienceLogic auto-resolved. There was no people involved at all. So within a few seconds, the incident is created, resolved, and everything is done and dusted, which is pretty cool. And there's plenty of other examples there, you know, where with USA Today, so or Gannett, the media outlet, you know, we helped them get a 38% reduction in their tickets that were worked by staff. With FleetCor, they're at 38% fewer incidents, and those incidents they can resolve 71% faster. And with Liberty Life Insurance down in South Africa, we helped them reduce their P1 incidents by 98%, so a 451-hour improvement. So lots of great stories that we can do this stuff. So how do we do this? So we do this with a single code-based technology that has been around for 18 years, that we've developed ourselves through our co-founders who were head of operations, just like you, and they had access to all the tools in the world, and when something went wrong, they said, great, I've now got 18 screens of red. How do I get this incident to the right resolver group first time? And of course, 50% of the time they couldn't do that. And by the time they got it to the right home, and those people started pinging devices and looking up the top 10 busiest running processes, things had changed from when the incident happened. So it said, got to be a better way to do this. And that way is the ScienceLogic way, where we provide this single code-based tool that allows you to firstly discover automatically what you've got in your environment. And we use 18 plus different protocols to discover over 6,400 device types out of the box, as well as being able to extend that to crazy things like we monitor the International Space Station and the Mars rover. So there's nothing we can't get to as long as we can programmatically get at the data. So once we discover that, and then we automatically turn on best practice monitoring so that you can see what is happening across your infrastructure, off-the-shelf applications, and cloud environments. We then use our PowerMap technology, which is the same single code-based tool, to add context to that. So how are these devices and cloud services talking to each other? So which server talks to which database, talks to which network device or which storage device. So we build up this map in real time. You don't have to manually do that. And that gives you two great things. It allows you to reduce your incidents caused by change, because you can see in real time the impact that a change in any particular device is going to have in your IT environment. You can plan properly. But secondly, it gives us the power to be able to say straight away, hey, we can see that, for example, this router has gone down and it's connected to these 100 VMs. Well, when that router goes down, you don't care about the 100 VMs, you just care about the router. So we'll automatically suppress those events, and therefore we've told you exactly the CI that is causing the problem. The third piece of the jigsaw is our automation. Again, built into exactly the same code base, which allows you to, at the time of the event, use one of our 500 plus automations to go and ping a device, do a trace route, run some OSPF queries, grab the top 10 busiest running processes or files, whatever it is, and even take action like restart a service automatically, which may well fix the problem. And of course, all of that we are feeding into your ITSM tool, be that Sherwell or ServiceNow, Remedy, whatever it is, so that within a minute of an incident occurring, the right resolver group is looking at all the information that they need to be able to solve that problem, or it's already been resolved. And that's the hardest piece of the jigsaw. Get the right information to the right person, and then they'll be able to solve that within a few minutes. Get rid of the war rooms, away we go. Now you're working at digital speed. Now there's one other thing that's really, really important in this, is the journey that you go on to success, right? The way that we work with clients is to really analyze your data. So we'll take 6 months worth of incident data from you and look at where you're spending the time. Is it that every day your guys are and girls are looking at the top 10 biggest files and trying to decide which ones to delete? Or is it that you've got P1 paralysis where you're in war rooms all the time? We'll do that work and look at the real data from you to work out what can be addressed and give you some quick wins. We then go through what we call our clarity workshop, which really brings the whole company together and really works on an important part of the project, which is the culture. From day one, for a project like this to be successful and transforming IT operations, everybody needs to know what they're trying to achieve, from the C-level down to the level 1 who is doing the work. So we bring you together to help understand your processes and help you build a realization plan and an outcome document that says, in order for you to deliver digital operations at speed, which is going to improve your profitability and improve your MPS score, then you're going to need to improve these processes, put these new technologies in place, and this is how you're going to do it to get to those outcomes. And that's the stage where we get into proof points, where you go talk to some of those customers I mentioned earlier, or many of our other ones, or we do a proof of technology with you that proves that we can help drive out those pain points. So the last thing that I wanted to leave you with is one of my favourite quotes from Henry Ford, which says, if I'd asked the public what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. And every time I talk to an IT leader at the moment, they talk about AI ops. And AI ops, for most people, says, let's put a layer of magic over all of the bad data that you've got from running your IT operations in a not as effective way as possible over the last 20 years or so, and try and make sense out of it. And that's really attractive, right? Because you don't have to do a lift and shift, but it's never going to get you to the outcomes that we've talked about that we delivered for those 4 customers and many more. If you want a faster horse, you can try that route, but we would suggest start with the data. Let's have a look and then let us help you transform your digital operations to be best in class. Thank you very much for watching today. Really, really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day, and I hope to meet you in person and so that I can help you on your digital operations journey.
Thank you, Austin. I really enjoyed that opening keynote presentation for this afternoon. Now we have another great session coming up.
It's so great to be here at Disruptive Seasons Spring. My name is Neal. I'm one of the co-founders. I'm so pleased to have Roger here with me today, my co-founder and partner in crime, and we're from Limitless, a gig CX platform which provides crowdsourcing for customer service. And we're so happy to be able to share with you our views. We've had the pride and privilege of spending our entire careers in customer service, and we're thrilled to be able to share some of our thoughts about what we think the future of gig CX and customer experience holds.
So we wanted to cover 3 areas in particular today. One is the people that provide great customer experience. 2 is the technology that enables them to do so on behalf of their brands. And 3 are, from a customer perspective, the customers that they serve. What are they demanding now and in the future from companies in terms of their customer experience?
Yeah, well, so I hope that resonates with everybody. So if we take that first topic, people, and I agree with you as well, by the way, what do you think are the kind of primary challenges with regards to people when we're thinking about the customer experience landscape now and in the near and midterm future?
Well, there are of course lots of challenges, and they'll be different for each and every company, but I think there are 3 big ones that come to mind. I think the first for me is around the knowledge and the speed to competency of the people that are providing customer service. The second would be around the availability and the accessibility to recruit that talent into the business. And then third, I think, is around attrition and turnover of staff and low pay across the world and across the industry in terms of how much people that provide customer service on behalf of brands are actually paid.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if we just touch on knowledge in a little bit more detail there, just from my own point of view and kind of talking to lots of major brands about some of the challenges they're seeing in their environments, some of the biggest challenges is just tapping into the native knowledge that people have on a product and service without having to train them. Some of the largest challenges around these really long, what we call speed to competence in the industry. It can sometimes take between 3 and 6 months to take an agent in a call center from walking in the door to get up to speed to help customers in the way that the brand would like them to do so. So we're seeing that being a massive challenge of how do we do that in this new world where actually people don't want to work 9 to 5 or their shifts in contact centers. And also the second piece is how do we use AI as an enabler to help that knowledge get up to speed quicker. So for me, 2 key points. How do we get people with the knowledge from the start, and how do we help them with AI on an ongoing basis?
Yeah, definitely. And we kind of then think about, well, where do you find those people with that native knowledge and that competency? How do you find them in the world at the moment? So I think we need to understand who they are and how the labour market is changing and the kind of global picture. I mean, firstly, the dynamics are changing. So millennials, Gen Zs are making up and will make up 75% of the workforce by 2025.
Amazing.
And how they work is going to be very different to the generations that have gone before them, and what they want to do, and especially as well since COVID, how people are wanting to work, whether they want to work in a hybrid, working in the office, working more remotely. So we need to adapt in terms of the industry with regards to finding and accessing that talent. People really, in a summary, I think, want to work on their own terms more.
Yeah.
They want to work where they want to, when they want to, and as how much they want to do so, in a way that they want to do it. And how can companies enable that to be a reality? Because if they can, they're going to then be able to access the talent they need.
Tap into that amazing knowledge that exists anywhere in the world. I think another key stat is that both Forbes, Gartner, many organizations are actually predicting that over 50% of the workforce in the US alone will be doing some form of freelancing or gig work at some point within the next few years. And the years change, but from anything from 25 to 2030. And I think the third point you raise around attrition and pay, I mean, there's a massive drive, or always has been in the industry, to reduce attrition. A significant percentage of resource simply isn't there 12 months after starting, which means you lose a huge amount of the knowledge and training effort that has been put into those individuals. But over and above that, there is an absolute need, with the cost of living increasing everywhere in the world, to pay people more. It's essential. These roles across the world have been minimum wage largely in its entirety. So finding a way to tap into ways to pay people more to attract talent that has higher skills, native knowledge, working on their own terms, has to be the way forward to provide a scalable but also robust solution for customer experience.
I totally agree. And and looking at how to do that, whether it's through taking out non-frontline resources, overheads, the systems themselves, the cost of the systems, which we'll perhaps talk a bit more about later. How do we do that in order to pay people who provide great customer experiences to others more, and what they're worth, and what's required?
Absolutely,
I think. So in summary, I mean, I think really what companies are looking to, or going to need to be able to do, is create more fluidity in their workforce and more agility. And to do that, they're going to need to attract different kinds of talent into their business who can help customers in the way that they're going to need to be supported in the future. So let's move on to the second area, which was the technology that will enable this new workforce in the future. And what potentially some of those challenges are, Megan. What do you see the challenges from a technology perspective?
Yeah, well, it's clearly going to have a massive impact the way organisations can really radically change the operating environment that the CX resources are using. But I think there's three core things that we need to resolve as an industry. The first is around accessibility and simplicity. The second is security and compliance. And the third is cost. So I'd love to dig into those three with you.
Yeah, no, I think there are three big areas for sure. Definitely when we're thinking about enabling that kind of more agile, more fluid workforce. So the first, I think you were saying around accessibility and simplicity of systems. So the simplicity of use of those systems and the accessibility to the information, the data, to make to complete the transaction. That's what we mean by accessibility. So I think there's been a desire and a recognition that legacy systems, multiple systems, are really difficult for us to train CX resources to be able to use. And if you couple that with that attrition and turnover, this is compounding the problem of that speed to competency that we were speaking about. So effectively, if we can actually put in that kind of one interface that enables the CX resources of the future to be able to, and I think control the access down to a single customer record, to be able to complete a specific transaction. So by enabling those resources to do that, I think is going to be a big part of making it more simple and giving them the access to what they need when they need it, and cutting out a lot of the complexity that exists today in all of these multiple legacy systems.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And when you start to think about the fluidity of the workforce that's needed, they're going to be anywhere in the world. They're going to be in any environment. They're going to be using any device, even whether that's a mobile device to engage, whether that's a laptop, what type of security. So the compliance aspect of that is critical, and layering on technology now like voice recognition, face recognition, to make sure that the person who's logged on to perform that task and help that customer is the person that you have approved and verified is absolutely critical. So for me, I agree with you, baselining the technology to get the simplicity of the interface so that we can get the speed to competency really low, but then it's how do we make sure that that person performing the task is the person you think they are. Because ultimately in a contact center environment, they're physically there in front of you. In the remote working and gig CX landscape, it's very different. And then what about cost? What do you think there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think from a cost perspective, we've been in the industry now over 25 years, believe it or not. And we've seen a huge change in the technology and movement from big on-premise systems requiring lots of support to the advent of cloud and the march towards cloud and movement there. But it's very expensive, and the way that you need to consume and buy the technology in the CX industry is very costly. So per seat, per license, per user, not too much flexibility in terms of that cost base. Even with the first move to the cloud, it's not created that cost reduction that everybody has seen. So I think what's going to happen, and what we're seeing, is the competition. So AWS Connect entering the market a while back, but now very recently Google coming in, and even more recently Zoom contact center technology. So the competition is growing all the time. The move to cloud is unstoppable, and it's growing faster all the time. And with that, what we're going to see is a move to more consumption-based pricing and a lower cost for that consumption-based pricing. It's inevitable. And of course, that is one area that if we can look to reduce the cost, we can then look to pay people more who provide great customer service. But what we can also do is begin to look at ways that those cost savings can also enable a much bigger workforce. So fluidity and agility is going to require people working much more smaller, bite size, maybe per task even, or very small shifts. And therefore you're going to need more people. So it's really important that if we can move to consumption pricing, it's going to enable that to happen.
I completely agree. I just like to imagine, rather than having 500 people in a contact center, have 5,000 people wherever in the world with the skills you need, the talent, the languages you need, all using the same systems in the most secure way, delivering you the amazing quality of service. Our current technology, infrastructure and pricing does not support that, and that has to change to support the future. So let's think about customers. Our final and third topic. What do you think are their core expectations in terms of the way they'll engage with these brands that they know and love in the future?
Yeah, well, we're consumers. Everybody here is consumers. We are moving very much and changing our behaviours. So I think many things are still true as they used to be, but certain things are changing. I think what we're seeing is definitely customers would love to self-solve. They don't want to have to contact organisations unless they have to, unless they can see a value in doing so. So that, I think, is continuing to be a key focus for organisations. They want to, I think, communicate on their own terms. So what that means is engage when they want to, and they want to engage with them in whichever kind of channels that I think that are readily available and easy to access again, and simple to access those organisations. They want it fast. Responsiveness, I think, is another key point off the back of that they very want to do so in a very fast way. And then empathy, I think. People that just have shared experiences and really understand them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you agree.
I agree, and I think just listening you kind of list out those 4 points, it really means and points towards an agile, fluid workforce, because to get responsiveness 24/7, you need a wide resource pool. You can't have a very restricted resource pool to do that. To get empathy, you need to be able to connect the customer with someone who is like them, who has a shared experience, who knows the product inside out, who hasn't had to spend 6 months training to get to that point. And of course, in the preferred channels, I'm a big believer that the customer can choose to engage when they want to, but when they do, the organisation needs to respond almost instantaneously. And of course that's very difficult to do with our traditional models like chat and voice, and so we are seeing asynchronous messaging kind of pick up, and I do think that will be the channel of the future.
Yeah, I think I totally agree, and I think with that asynchronous messaging, which to everybody else it effectively means that experience that we have when we're sending an SMS or a WhatsApp message or Facebook Messenger, those are increasing in our everyday life, and consumers are very keen to be able to talk to brands using that channel. I think we're definitely seeing kind of the death of live chat, in terms of this necessity to have to schedule people and try to create these big labour forces that are there to have this continuous conversation. We are all working in unconnected in kind of disconnected conversations, in as much as they're aggregated over time. So, I think that's definitely important. However, as you say, the responsiveness, so making sure that you have the agility of the workforce to be there to respond fast, kind of on demand, but equally allowing the consumer to respond at their own pace. I think that's really important. And then finally, I think, as you were saying, from my perspective, empathy, and it's been something we've been trying to train, develop, recruit for 25 years. But really true empathy comes from understanding and potentially walking in the same shoes of those consumers. And I think there's no replacement for if you have people that are passionate about products and services and about the brands, and they actually use them themselves and have that kind of hands-on experience, that then enables them to have that empathy, to understand how to help and solve those kind of customer issues or add value to the customer, and show them how they've got the experience, the value from those products and services.
So I guess we're imagining a world where we never have to train anyone. They know everything they need to know. They have tools and systems that make it easy for them. They're everywhere and anywhere. And effectively it means the customer gets the service they need whenever they want it. There's no friction point in that whatsoever.
Absolutely. So, in summary, I think we know that the industry, the future of CX, lies in a change in who is providing great customer experiences, where they're working, on a global scale, and how they're working, perhaps on a gig basis or on a much more kind of reduced, scheduled basis, so much more part-time work. And I think we're very proud, I know, to be part of that.
Yeah. So thank you very much. It's been an amazing opportunity to share our thoughts with you today and about the role of gig CX in remote working. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for joining us for the memory of a lifetime. Our next session will commence in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome. My name's Gavin Anderson. I'm the founder of an organisation called the N2 Collective. Normally, I'm knee-deep in branding and digital solutions for clients, but one of my passions is AI, machine learning, and deep learning. And that brings me to robots on the road. Why do we need robots on the road? The online delivery market has exploded, not just during lockdown. This chart goes back to 2014. So we can see that the volume of deliveries is almost quadrupled. And it puts these on the road. Lots of vans, dirty diesel-driven vans. Yes, some are electric, some are well-maintained. We have the big brands that probably do well-maintain their trucks. But the problem is it puts lots of vehicles on the road. In this shot, which is what you'd recognize from, if you're in the UK, the M25, over, almost 40% of the vehicles in this shot are commercial, small commercial vehicles. And also we've seen this, and how many times in your own street have you actually seen more than one delivery van turn up to do deliveries? We all like our delivery drivers. I've got to know my Amazon Prime driver quite well over the last couple of years. He's almost a regular at our house. So there's nothing against our cheery delivery drivers, but we do have to actually talk about the elephant in the room. And that's diesel, that's pollution. All these extra vans on the road, which are, on average, about between 55 to 75% empty, that are driving around the road. So if we multiply all those different deliveries coming to our street on a daily basis and all the vans, it's not very efficient. It's actually deeply inefficient. One of my favorite sayings from one of my favorite men, we can't solve problems with the same thinking we use to create them. So how do we solve this? Well, one of the solutions to be put forward is air delivery from drones. A company called Wing, they're in operation in, as it says, Australia, Finland, and the United States. You can get a cup of coffee in 6 minutes, dropped to your front garden. It will never happen in the UK because we have noise abatement laws that sit at a local level. And also the UK is not really logistically, we have too many tall blocks of flats, etc. It's not a solution. So what is a solution? Meet Cargo. Cargo is an autonomous delivery robot. It's not connected to GPS. It's not connected to Wi-Fi. It's also not designed to drive from Land's End to John O'Groats. It's only designed to work within a 5 or 10 mile radius of the depot. So if you imagine the big truck goes to the Reading depot unloads it into lots of little cargoes, the cargoes with zero emissions, and also the cargoes are actually small enough to be legally used on cycle tracks, but large enough to actually go on dual carriageways. They have a very small footprint, smaller than a Mini. You pie in the sky, you might say, yeah, this is something of the future. Well, no. 2 years ago, we launched it at Goodwood. It seemed appropriate. Cargo was born out of some of the research and development that was done for the Mars lunar probe, Mars rover, sorry, in the University of Wales. So Goodwood, the famous hill at Goodwood, that's where we decided to launch it. That's where we decided to drive it, because it is a British invention with British technology. I'm not kind of going down the Union Jack road here, but I am actually calling out the recognition of the University of Wales, in their science program that's now moved into vehicles. This has been developed and delivered by a company called the Academy of Robotics. And to the point of, is it pie in the sky? This is a picture of the first ever delivery robot in the UK getting a registration plate to be able to be driven on the road. Robots are on the road. This one's been in pilot down the southeast for the last few months. There you can see Cargo with his number plate. Cargo does have to have a physical driver inside him at the moment, because the law states, even with testing, that a human driver must be able to take over control of the vehicle at any point. And we're going to come back to that a little bit later. So how does Cargo work? Cargo it can load in about 40 parcels. 80% of the world's parcels are about the size of a cardboard box that you buy your trainers in. So you imagine you load in the 40 parcels. The vehicle, the robot, then texts everybody with a parcel saying, I'm going to be there at 10 past, I'm going to be there at 20 to 1, to make sure that you're going to be in. And if you're not in, you can actually say, well, actually, I'll be around the corner in the pub. Or should I say cafe? Cafe is probably more politically correct. I'll be around the corner in the cafe. Cargo can come and find you. Then you use your mobile phone, similar to the Apple Pay or NFC, touch your mobile phone in the back of it. The rear opens up, and that one compartment, that is your goods, is delivered. This is William, actually, the founder of Academy of Robotics. And this was the pilot down in Hounslow, where we were delivering medicine to old people's homes during lockdown. Cargo's not the only game in town. I hear you say. This is Neuro. Neuro's been on the roads in California for a while. Yeah, it's been doing very well, but again, it needs the GPS and it needs the Wi-Fi. And I'll touch on why having vehicles connected can be a bit of a challenge. The Google car. Yeah, shame they didn't do more in the design. But hey, this is the first generation. All credit to what Google are doing. But again, it's something that has to connect to real-time data. They're trying to design cars, that can drive from one end of the country to the other, when actually the things that need done, the deliveries, the pharmacies, your groceries, your Amazon Primes, they don't need to drive across the country. They don't need to carry 4 people. They need to carry some parcels. So let's touch on the connected car. Why is the connected car not so good? Well, first thing is self-driving cars will be connected to the cloud. You have to make sure of your security, because if you're driving down the Autobahn in Germany and your dashboard flashes up that your electric car is getting a firmware update, I think you probably want to feel fairly secure that it is Volkswagen that's doing the firmware update to your car and not somebody else. So security is one challenge, especially with the robots. You may know this one, this was a couple of years ago, where they hacked a self-driving car, drove into a ditch, turned the brakes on, etc. I should say this wasn't a malicious hack, this was an invited one. The guys were actually in the car with their laptops, but it does show back then, cars were vulnerable. Still, I think today there's still probably a level of security around updating and remotely connecting to the cars. So, what makes non-connected robots different? Well, they learn. So, I was going back to the point of where robots aren't for driving from Land's End to John O'Groats. Robots are for delivering within the 5 or the 10 miles of a depot. Think of having a Waitrose in Reading, and you have 5 cargoes or 5 robots in the basement. You can load up your deliveries. They can head off for the day, do local deliveries. And as you can see by some of this imagery, the car actually, or the vehicle, learns its environment. And every day it learns more. So it learns that there's some traffic lights extra new traffic works on the high street, it learns that Mill Pond Close is closed for the next 2 weeks. This is something that smart cars don't do. So your Google cars and all your Teslas assess what's in front of them and make a decision. A robot will already have a bank of knowledge about the area that they're in and then make a decision. So no surprises. So this is a rather technical map, but basically what you see here is this was the first Google car crash. So Google testing car, the Google car is wanting to turn left. It looks up the inside lane, it sees a bus coming. It thinks, okay, yeah, that's fine. The bus, there's enough time for the bus to stop. It pulled out and the bus hit it. Who pulls out in front of a bus? You're challenging human nature there. So connected cars have to be very, very smart. Robots just need to know where they are and what they're doing, because we're not asking robots at the moment to drive from Land's End to John O'Groats. This was cargo doing some deliveries, the pharmacy deliveries. I can't talk about robots without talking about one of my favorite ones, which is the Starship. If you come up to Milton Keynes, I live very close to Milton Keynes, you'll see these little characters on the road, fully autonomous, the co-op's piloting them. At the moment, elderly customers can put their shopping in one of these units, and this unit will head off and deliver it to their house. Also home deliveries, food deliveries, these are very common in the streets of Milton Keynes now, partly because we have cycleways and redways, so it's easier for them to get route access. And if you need to deliver multiple things, again, that hub and spoke model, we can actually move or you can move a vehicle with robots to an area. As long as they know that area, they can all be distributed out of one vehicle, go to the local deliveries, all back into one vehicle, and you're gone. Sending one vehicle instead of 10, 15, or 20. We go back to that multiple vehicles turning up in your street every day. I spoke about how robots have to, the current law for the UK says that you have to be able to take control of an autonomous vehicle at any moment in time. We're still not allowed full autonomous vehicle driving on the road at the moment. This is the command center, Athena, which carries cargo, the working prototype that does most of the pilots at the moment. Athena basically has a seat and a control system in it. So you can actually see what every cargo is doing, and you can take over. I mean, yes, think PlayStation, but think a bit more high tech. And yes, that is the British Army and the RAF sitting at the controls. The applications for robots with no humans in them that have a deep understanding of where they are, an area that they've been taught, is certainly for the armed forces, non-combat armed forces will be very useful. So, cargo on the road with his number plate. Normally you black out number plates when you show people slides, because you don't want somebody to copy it. There is only one autonomous robot legally registered in the UK on British roads, and you're looking at it. So, are robots on the road? Well, robots are already on the road, and they're on the pavement. So the next time you see one of these robots, be kind to them. They're helping save the environment, and they're making our lives better. Thank you for your time.
Next, I give a warm welcome to Alan Behrens, Managing Director of Taxil.
Hi, my name's Alan Behrens from Taxil. And today what I wanted to do is just take a couple of minutes to talk about where we are today. I think I talked last year, for those of you who've watched this series before, about some of the things I thought were happening, some of the important technology topics that are in a transient state. And I think things have changed significantly since then. I mean, I was looking at some notes from a presentation I made back in, dare I say it, 2007, with topics such as globalization and demographics and the environment as key topics that people talk about when they talk about environmental or worldwide global drivers. And some of those have fundamentally changed, which is an interesting trait because when those global drivers change, they change what we can see, what we need to do, and how we respond in terms of technologies. And in particular, I think, although things like globalization have changed, I mean, with what's happened over the past few months in Eastern Europe, as we all know, this whole topic of globalization is under scrutiny. And that forces us to rethink the way we use technology to manage the processes and the digitalization of the world we live in. I think the other thing that's really quite an interesting trait was when we talk about globalization, obviously supply chains are a part of that when we talk about technologies, and that's a thing that's changed as well. So I'll come back onto that in a few minutes. The one trait which I thought is still very interesting and under scrutiny and evolving dramatically is sort of the environment, you know, and what we think of sustainability. These are areas where I know there's a lot of IT companies and a lot of customers still very interested. Obviously, the amount of money they provide to it versus other areas is changing, but they are still very high on the list. And I mean, bear in mind the sort of environment that I talked about in 2007 is so different to what we have now. For those still to be at the top is very impressive. Similarly, demographics was a topic I spoke about in the bad old days, as we call them. That really has moved now to not so much demographics, but the work modality, I think. I mean, the way I like to look at it is not just the fact that you can't find people for the sorts of jobs you need and their skills aren't available. It's also how you interact with them and the environment they work in. You know, some of those things have changed the way and the nature in which we can employ people, use people, and the types of technologies they understand. So let's talk about the technologies now, you know, with these global drivers changing and the shifts in the sort of the tectonic world of politics that we're seeing at the moment. There are some major shifts, and there are some shifts which are accelerating over the past, I would even say, few months. If we talk about digitalization, digitalization to me is all about changing the way that we work, the way that we use technologies, and the tools that are developed by the ISVs and major technology companies. This sort of environment whereby the supply chain is shifting from, well, it's global, we're going to buy our parts from everywhere, we've got all these huge supply chains, design chains, multi-tier networks. That's changing. It's changing dramatically because, I mean, I've heard of automotive companies in Germany not being able to get parts for years now. They put product programs and car programs on hold indefinitely, some of them. This is dramatic stuff over what's happening in Eastern Europe in particular. So the supply chain has to change. And in turn, the software that we use and the design methods that we use to design our products have to change with it. These schisms in the way that, you know, we interact, we develop products, we produce them, are having basically reminded us that the world is not stable. We focused our efforts in the past on making better and better software, better and better environments, you know, moving to, you know, little tweaks to do things better and quicker. And actually, we sort of forgot that we need to deal with chaos, right? And that to me is a learning experience or an experiential environment where I think some of the companies that now develop these technologies, of course, have got to think of, let's not just try and improve stuff, let's try and make it bulletproof. We do this when we talk about resiliency in computing platforms, you know, disaster recovery, for example. In terms of cloud infrastructures, you know, we have, cloud is just now a given. And we have this resiliency built into our environments. We just don't seem to have done the same when it comes to, for instance, design and manufacture in the same way. Now, you may say, well, that's because one could never predict. Well, the whole thing about disaster recovery is that it isn't about prediction of what may happen. It's prediction of what probably won't happen, right? And I think it's a learning operation, an experience that we need to take on board, and I think things need to change. So digitalization, we've got these, the new word of metaverse, these environments where we're trying to, we're now so digital, how do we integrate these digital environments together? This is having a dramatic change, I think, and will have a dramatic change on the usability in particular of technologies, and also in the sort of open world, the world that we can integrate together these technologies to do something much more useful than just having discrete bits of tech that people use. This whole sort of experience that we face in the future, I think, is going to be better because of this, the world of the metaverse. It's a bit of a marketing ploy, I think, as well. I mean, the brand name, well, it isn't a brand name, it's an environment, it's a methodology, I suppose. But the metaverse is really, to me, it's about creating a more open environment where people can integrate stuff together to create something that has got a much better experience and is much more valuable for users and for customers. So that's one thing. Supply chain, again, I see, how do we deal with this problem that we've got with the supply chains? It's not just the physical containers and where are they and who are we going to use. It's creating a degree of resiliency into the network. And part of this, I think, goes to when we're talking about manufacturing, people talk about additive. Additive has its place, but I think people are going to look at stuff and they're going to say, how can we design this for a bit more resiliency on our production side? So do we need something that's the best, or can we do 80% but have it much more reliable in terms of our ability to produce or mass produce? So I think we're going to see some interesting changes there. And let's talk about complexity. So, one of the things that somebody mentioned to me the other day, which I think is very true, is, before in fact, I was one of these people that was talking about reducing complexity when we talk about the products we have. Well, I've changed my mind, actually. It's not so much about reducing complexity, it's about managing it. And when we talk about the products we use and the methods we use to develop them and produce them, it really is about figuring out how we can deal with this complexity to actually make it much more practical. Part of that, for instance, in the design of products is about using some degree of escalation of reducing the complexity of code, for instance, low code, no code. How can we take what was a complex, very laborious process and bite-size it into things that we can actually do in short spurts, so the agile environment? How can we reuse information? So it's all about managing it better, and the tools we're getting help us use synthesis, for example, within electronics to increase the abstraction level that we deal with these types of development environments and products, because they are so complex. We're talking about billions of gates, of silicon gates within a chip. There's no way you can do that on paper. Humans can't comprehend the complexity. We need computers to do this. And this is, in fact, where AI comes in. And listening to NVIDIA last week in their annual conference, it brings it home to you the importance of things like AI, machine learning, and automation in trying to reduce the complexity of what we have to deal with in terms of the technologies we deal with. And I think they're very important, but they're not the be-all and end-all, because going back to my comment earlier about disruption and the like, we need to not only deal with the known, but we don't want to be as wrong as other people as wrong as we are, right? So we want to be able to deal with the unknown. And that's the interesting one. How can we deal with the unknown? Does AI really allow us to deal with the unknown? It's an interesting question. It allows us to cater for more variance. It allows us to test different things, but we still need something that allows us to do things that we would not have thought of before. And in fact, I was reading about Dyson the other day. That's something that made him famous. What he did was very innovative, but actually it was inventive. It was less innovative than inventive. I know he had a lot of innovation, a lot of cycles in developing his products, but actually they were things that were very left field, and we need technologies and environments to help us do that. And I think, to be fair, the metaverse is one of the things that will allow us to do that. So just a couple of musings from me for the spring session of these shows. Hope that was interesting. Hopefully more later on this year.
Hello. Are you loving today's show? Do you have your own opinions on today's topics? If so, we're waiting to hear from you in our comments feed. Let's hear what our next speaker has to share.
So what do the 5 most profitable companies in the world have in common? Cash reserves, real estate? No. Each of these companies can collect, analyze, and act on data at scale to make effective business decisions. Amazon is a perfect example of this kind of an organization. Ben Franklin once said, "An investment in knowledge pays the best interest." And today, data is knowledge, and knowledge is power. We see this trend across a huge range of businesses as data-driven decisions continually deliver results. The importance of data cannot be overestimated. The market for big data analytics is now set to hit over $100 billion by 2023. And by 2025, 63 exabytes of data will be generated by us humans around the globe every day. But just 2% of those data are going to be saved. The rest will either be deleted or lost. So how much of that is even analyzed? That's a lot of wasted potential, according to Ben Franklin. We ran our own research with IDC and found that data workers waste 100,000 human lifespans each year on inefficient data work. They spend a fifth of their total working week redoing the same calculations that they did just the week before. It takes 6.6 million rows of data on average to deliver just 4 unique analytic assets. My name is Libby Duane. I am Chief Advocacy Officer and co-founder here at Alteryx, the analytics automation company. Today, we have a global customer base of almost 8,000 customers across every industry and can count 43% of the Global 2000 as Alteryx customers. While the power of data cannot be underestimated, many organizations face a situation where the wealth of data, but the poverty of insights, is stalling their transformation. The IIA and Forrester have a fascinating 5-stage model that assesses and maps analytics maturity for businesses. This research shows where organizations are on their journey to becoming a truly data and analytics-driven organization, while highlighting that analytically mature companies deliver better financial performance. The IIA report also states that only 24% of companies are data-driven. This turns out that the average across about a couple of thousand enterprises is a score of only 2.2 out of 5. In context, this is equal to roughly 1% of the workforce being analytically capable. Digital transformation is not easy, but the blocker is not the tools and technology that are available. 91% of businesses say that they cannot meet their potential due to the skills gap in data and analytics. While many organizations invest heavily in transformation technologies, many fail to integrate digital across their business. They think that digital transformation means applying new technology to a process. But digital transformation is just as much about the human and managing through change as it is about the technology. Business and government leaders tell me frequently that surfacing key insights daily is mission critical for them to stay competitive. But they also tell me they're still in the early stages of their data journey. There's a real sense of urgency and pressure to upskill their workforces to reduce that global skills gap in data analytics, because that skills gap is increasing. Most companies have some employees who can execute some pretty advanced analytics, but many more are still challenged by the terabytes of raw data piling up literally around the business. Even at many analytics-focused enterprises, most employees cannot work beyond basic spreadsheet manipulation. Laggards in the data literacy race are leaving over 2.5 quintillion bytes of data untouched. In the next few years, that analytic divide between companies that can harness these data and those that cannot is going to continue to widen, which is why it's paramount that everyone in the workforce should be able to discover, analyze, and reach answers through data, not just reserving that for a handful of specialists. The good news is pretty much all companies recognize that they want to move up this curve and are investing in data and analytic capabilities. But as businesses move from being data hoarders to driving real insights, they're using far more of these data now by democratizing the responsibility of analytics. What we see are skills constraints, combined with the use of inefficient legacy spreadsheet tools hindering this progress. This means a growing number of people versus technology divide, which is growing. Clearly, there will never be enough data scientists, but it does not need to stay that way. While companies look outward for technical solutions, data literacy comes from within. According to Gartner, by 2023, data literacy will become an explicit and necessary driver of business value. The truth is that many people in your business, they're hiding in plain sight. Instead of hiring from the outside for a limited number of positions, companies need to look inward and upskill the existing employee base. Through the use of no-code, low-code, self-service analytic platforms, organizations can open up the world of analytics to the entire workforce. This enablement of knowledge workers is what we define as democratizing analytics. These employees are improving processes, mitigating risk, and driving efficiencies across the enterprise. In the end, companies have a choice of how much time, resources, and money they're going to invest in upskilling and in the democratization of analytics. But the reality is, by upskilling domain experts who understand the business with data literacy, those are the ones who know where the gold is buried, and they can deliver those breakthrough insights. While this journey is challenging as companies try to jump to full digital transformation, our experience in helping our customers on their digital transformation journey consists of your upskilling of your domain experts. The people who own the process are the ones improving the processes. This means people learning how to work with data in more advanced and efficient ways than using a spreadsheet, followed by the automation of data processes. These domain experts, or what we refer to as knowledge workers, are then enabled to invest in the development of their analytic skills and they're driving bigger value and bigger results for the company. It also greatly improves job satisfaction for these knowledge workers, exciting them about the impact they're making while also driving results. But once these steps are understood, digital transformation will happen with the democratization of analytics. And with the democratization of analytics, your organization's digital transformation will be driving results with significant impact. So while the road to a fully transformed, data-driven company may be a long one, the talent, the tools, and the learning to deliver business-changing insights are all within your reach. It just needs a culture where every person across the business is empowered with the right skills and the right technology, so that more people can use data to drive business value. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Sunley, Channel Director at Digitalization, and today I'm joined by Dave Lewis, who's one of the co-founders at AIOps. Nice to see you again, Dave. Thanks for joining us. So tell us a little bit about what AIOps do.
Okay, so AIOps is a specialist consultancy organisation focusing, as the name suggests, around AIOps technologies and related types of tech, so observability, monitoring, automation.
And so what are the types of customers that you're working with today that you can see a need for this sort of technology?
So we don't really focus on any particular technology, any particular customer area. So it could be banking, financial services, it could be retail, telecommunications, government defence. Any organisations where there is a large IT estate, where there's lots of complexity, perhaps has been built up over a lot of time, that have got a requirement for a large IT operations department that are typically experiencing issues around the volume of event data and general monitoring requirements.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of what we've seen at Digitalization, that because this sort of technology is looking at managing the back-end infrastructures, the applications, and the technologies that these businesses are run on, it doesn't matter what they're doing on the front end of things. This is a technology, it's not like a chatbot, it's not customer facing. This is kind of in the backbone of the business, helping them to reduce cost and effort and increase efficiencies in the day-to-day management and kind of keeping the lights on the business. So yeah, what are the types of challenges then that your customers have been seeing where AIOps have been assisted?
Yeah, so as I say, the sheer volume of data that is coming out of all the different areas that an IT operations department needs to look after, from networking to applications, servers, and endpoints, both from an IT operations point of view and also from a security, sort of cybersecurity standpoint these days. It's just that volume is getting to the point now where humans just are really struggling to process it, to make sense of it, to understand different systems, different areas of the business where this data is coming from, having to sort of correlate it and make decisions on where to send that information to for things to be fixed, and just to understand the general context of the operations department.
Yeah, because obviously typically these operations teams, they are siloed. That you have subject matter experts, you'll have a database team that is focusing on their Oracle estates, the SQL Server estates, maybe some of your Neo4js, MongoDBs. That yes, they have that area of expertise, but all of those monitoring tools that are picking up perceived issues are going through to that initial stage, that someone has to look into it to decide which side of the team does that then have to go into. And that way of working is it's not allowing the business to have a kind of consolidated view of what's happening across the whole IT estate. It is very segmented. And then what we've seen typically in those scenarios is that a customer will potentially have to bring a member of each of those siloed teams in if they can't understand the root cause of that issue, you've then got 6 people having to work on one issue, which I'm sure you've seen is on average a couple of hours from a ticket being raised through an ITSM tool, like ServiceNow or into Remedy, to the actual resolution. So that's a lot of man hours to address one incident. And as you mentioned, there's the sheer volume that now coming into these environments because of the advances in the monitoring tools that they're picking up a lot more. It's causing this kind of avalanche of workloads on these teams. So have you seen that the customers are struggling with the results required and being able to scale up and scale down based on the business needs?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you were saying, it's just if it's taking that amount of time, that number of people, potentially in a war room or whatever, to from the time it takes to receive an incident or to receive knowledge that there is a problem out there somewhere in the system, to try and figure out and pinpoint exactly which area of the business is causing it. Getting it to the right, to the right department, to the right set of people to look at it. That time that it takes end to end, just in the last few years has been getting more and more and more, and that's one of the key areas that AIOps as a technology set addresses. It's routing it to the right people in a timely fashion, and making sure that also you've got the sort of enrichment in terms of the data that we can bring in from different sources to not only get it to the right person, but also to give them some tools that sort of pre-triage it so that they can so they can understand what types of things have caused it, what other anomalies might have been going on within the business or external to the business or to the IT organisation.
Yeah, it's that things like root cause analysis, being able to say even if it's not a self-healing solution, being able to get to that root cause quickly and then pass that information, because the majority of the time spending resolving the ticket is actually finding out what the issue is. It typically takes next to no time for an expert in that field to actually address the issue and fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. Root cause analysis it's something that's been around as a concept for quite a while, but a lot of the AI technology is now it's really sort of is honing that technology to cut out a lot of the noise. So you might have an storm event flood where you end up not really being able to see the wood for the trees. So you say you get 1,000 incidents or events come in, hit the system, hit the IT operations desk, and nobody really knows where to start looking. But if you can understand the topology of within the organisation, within the IT estate, and even make some educated guesses or be absolutely 100% certain on, that's what the root cause of this is, we can suppress the rest of it, and then enable the organisation to work on that, on resolving that one key incident, and then everything else sort of goes away.
Yeah, I think when I first initially got into kind of the AI automation space, that a lot of the customers that were looking at this sort of technology, they weren't ready. They go, yeah, we need to leverage AI somehow. They didn't know how to, but we kind of have seen over the last 2 or 3 years now that it's starting to get a bit of traction. There's large globally dispersed enterprises that are all using this. Some of the biggest organisations in the world have been using this technology for potentially up to a decade, but it's only now that people are kind of starting to take notice that, oh, this is proven. It's this isn't a technology that is just being created. This is kind of an amalgamation of all different technology sets that kind of all fall under the broad AI umbrella, but it's bringing them together. And I think what Digitake did well in that space is around a lot of vendors now in the AI ops space, but it's providing that closed loop automation, not just looking at monitoring and using AI and analytics to derive some insights from all those monitoring tools, where that's a lot of the AI ops vendors focus on that area, or they just focus on automation or some sort of intelligent automation. So what do you see for the future of IT operations there?
So there's a key quote from Gartner that was published recently that says, "There's no future of IT operations without AI ops." And I think that is absolutely where the market is going, because of all the things we've been talking about in terms of the increase in volume, increase in complexity. We absolutely have to start to rely on IT and machines to help out with processing and understanding the IT operations landscape. So that's the AI ops industry is going to be absolutely key to IT operations moving forward, in order to give teams the breathing space and the bandwidth to be able to operate, keep the lights on, and drive organisations forward.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us. I hope you found it informative, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the sessions.
Well, that was some great insights. Let's head straight into the next.
Hi there, I'm Jamie Dessar, and I'm here on Disruptive Events to talk about crypto mining. Let's start. What is crypto mining? How do I know about it? And sort of what got me into this in the first place. So my background is in computer engineering. I built a few companies, network solutions, and it left me with a lot of hardware, a lot of old computer parts left over. And with that, I wanted to start exploring into the world of crypto mining. Who, what, where, and why. So just to explain, what is crypto mining? There is something called a blockchain. A blockchain is one big online transactional ledger which records every detail, every transaction, and every bit of money in and out of crypto wallets. Someone needs to record these. Something needs to put these on the ledger, and that's where crypto miners come. So all a crypto miner really is a mini accountant that's computerized and programmed to record all these transactions onto the blockchain, onto the open ledger. And for doing that, you get rewarded in that coin. And this is obviously what I've been doing, and this is what I've done over the last 5-6 years. So what got me into crypto mining? Well, as I just explained, I had a network solution company, I had loads of hardware, I had spare computer parts, and back in a time around 2012, 2013, crypto and Bitcoin was a talk on a few people's tongue. Now I wanted to buy these cryptos. Unfortunately, there wasn't exchanges, there wasn't open places to buy it, so I had to find my way around doing this. And the best way of doing that was to get my old equipment and turn them into crypto miners. This started off on a very, very small scale. Started using old tablets, old motherboards, old CPUs, old graphic cards. Before I knew it, I had a mini little farm. This started making me a bit of revenue, and it obviously got me into the world of cryptos, and I was enjoying it, loving it. I wanted to find out more. So I started going on YouTube, started looking in all the sort of online places and forums, trying to find ways I could scale it. And I realized GPU mining was the way to go. With this, I purchased around 50 GPUs. I purchased a load of motherboards, power supplies, found a spare factory, and before you knew it, I had my first mini farm. Well, with mining, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, it's not just running some hardware. It's not just about making a bit of cryptocurrency. This is a real business. You have hardware costs, you have electric costs, you need to factor in staff, and well, before I knew it, a couple years down the line, I had my first mining business. Now, a few tips to people out there trying to get into mining. There's a few things you want to sort of look into. First of all, use wholesalers, okay? You can buy equipment on eBay, online, directly from the stores, but if you really want to grow and scale a business, you need to make sure you get the cheapest sources. The next thing you need to factor in is your electric costs. Electric is your biggest overhead when mining, okay? So there's a few ways to do this. You can look to get alternative energy. You can look to get solar panels. So the way that I did this is I found a farm that had alternative energy through the use of silos and manure. And this obviously gave me the best rates to obviously maximize my mining potential. So this is one thing you've really got to take a look into. And the third tip I'll give anyone getting into miner is do not cheap out on circuit breakers and a good electrician, because if your equipment blows, you have nothing there in the start, okay? So, as I said, Those are your tips if you want to look into mining. So as I mentioned earlier, I started building a small farm. It turned into an actual business, but even then, I knew I wanted to grow more. The thing is, coins get harder to mine, different coins come in the market, and you're constant in a battle between flipping your coins, exchanging them on a real exchange, turning that into fiat currency, because crypto is great to hold, but unfortunately, if you are running a business, you need to run your business with fiat, with sterling, with US dollar, with euros, in a currency that obviously a bank will accept. So that was obviously a big part of trying to find the do's, the don'ts, the rights and the wrongs in what I was doing, and that was one of the challenges I've had. But I got through it, and a few years down the line, in the end, I ended up growing into a 2,000 GPU server farm. I had a few staff, it was a registered business, and it was a semi-success. As I said earlier though, things get harder to mine, coins get depleted, and it got to a cycle where crypto hit such a boom, the public was buying so much into it, it affected what I was mining at the rate I was mining. So this was a point that obviously I wrapped up things, sold off the hardware, and led me to where I am now. The back end of December, I found my first ever job in blockchain, where I now work as MetaFrames. And this took something from my past, something as a hobbyist, something as a bit of fun, that turned into a business, and now I can use this in the real world. And that brings me to where I'm here today. So guys, I just want to thank Disruptive Seasons for having me today. To everyone out there, if you want to find more about MetaFrames, what we're actually up to in the crypto space and in the blockchain area, please follow our socials, Instagram, LinkedIn and Twitter. All the information will be there. Thank you guys.
Up next, we have Karl West, Client Development Director, EMEA at Quantilope.
Hello, my name is Karl West and I'm from Quantilope. Last time you saw me at the autumn season event, I was talking about market research. Now, why is that important? Because I was talking about and discussing the insights dilemma. As we all know, due to COVID and the dynamic change of retail and the way we interact with brands, it's becoming a digital first economy. And that creates a very big issue, what we call the insights dilemma. What is that dilemma? Well, essentially, it's about an issue of speed and substance. As increasingly data is being generated from businesses and brands and retailers across the world, speed is becoming more and more relevant to all of us. It's becoming a concern as well to each of us. The trouble is, with speed, you then balance that with the issue of quality. So faster and faster data coming to you in different streams, and obviously the weight of that data creates a real big issue. So when you're looking at market research and you're looking at the surveys and the data that you're collecting from people's purchases, there's so much more of it. But unfortunately, speed gives you relevance, but in the past, it's also caused an issue about substance and quality. So what I talked about on the last season's event was I was talking about our platform, the ability to create insight automation. This gives the ability for businesses, market research and insight teams to effectively automate the mundane part of their analysis so they can make them more proactive and empower them to do better insights, rather than being a reaction-based insights team, being a proactive-based insight team. So question is, why do you care? Why do I care? Well, the fact of the matter is the research and the way it's been run for many, many years has typically been what we see in IT, the break-fix mentality. Insight teams and market research teams have been sat there waiting for a problem to be presented. You know, go and size the market for me. Where's the biggest brands? Where's the biggest opportunities? And that was very much the case for many, many years. More ad hoc, more reactive, and that created issues. Because obviously when it was reactive, it was less relevant and less poignant to the business. So fundamentally, where did that demand come from? Well, it came from two things really. One, it was about buying research, whether it be secondary or primary research, to evaluate how a business had been done in the past, how it performed, had it learned from the previous year, etc. And then there was the other camp, which was the opportunity, where organizations were buying insights, they were buying research to generate and extrapolate a way forward, tactics, strategy, and a vision going forward. The funny thing is that most of the businesses were buying insight on the basis of cost. And of course, the more they spent, typically the bigger a risk, because with a bigger risk, you want to make sure that data is correct, but very much reactionary. So today that has really, really changed. The fact of the matter is, with SaaS and cloud, AI, machine learning, we have the ability at our fingertips, a lot more data and a lot more insight. And why is this important? Well, it's not just about delivering the information, it's about creating the actions that the stakeholders, the C-suite in the business, can then take and make better, more informed decisions. Less gut and more informed decisions. So I want to quickly touch on a few methods. Now, you don't need to know a lot about the methods, but what I want to do is illustrate their impact. Now, the first one is Mps, Net Promoter Score. We all know this one. We see it within most of the websites we go through. We have it within our CRM systems, ERP systems, etc. It's the ability to score the interactions with your customers, for them to evaluate and feed back to you whether your service is good or bad. Customer satisfaction being another area. Well, what is this useful for? Well, fundamentally, it's about word of mouth, independent validation, but also it's about eliminating churn. When you're in a position where you're going from break-fix organization to a subscription model, you want to make sure that your sales team are growing your business, but nobody is churning the business at the back end. So MPS is a really good way of understanding whether you're doing the right job at the right time. Now, when you look at segmentation, typically known as personas, most organizations in the past would look to do a segmentation every 3 to 4 years. And the reason being is because it costs so much money. As an account-based marketer, you would look at segmentation as being your primary tool, because it was about creating personas, the types of buyers that you go after, the types of organizations you go after, and the ones, more importantly, that you don't. But the great thing about segmentation now, especially if it's iterative, and things like our platform enables you to keep running that segmentation, you can then identify white spots. Now look at the way that COVID has happened and the impact it has had on the buying cycle and the purchase journey. We are now seeing huge changes in the personas of the people and how they act and how they interact. So segmentation is a great tool to understand opportunity, where you can generate new business, but also save money by not spending loads of marketing dollars on areas that aren't going to give you the return on investment. Now, MaxDiff is probably one of the terms that most of you won't understand. But actually, when you're looking at product development, campaign development, when you're looking at what things to talk about when it comes to product, MaxDiff is an advanced marketing method which can have a real impact on your business. And the reason why it's very valuable, because what it does, it evaluates the importance of certain features and benefits to a customer, but also, counter to that, will then evaluate what is not important. Now, what it does is it scales the different features against each other and weights them. So as a sales team, as a marketing team, you can then spend less time doing a scattergun approach, basically peddling features to all of your campaign and all your customers. You can focus on the things that matter to your business. Once again, saves you money on campaigns that are not going to be effective. But the second part, and the most important part, it generates new opportunities for your business. It generates new revenue and potential new profit. So, the last one is brand tracking. Now, as an established brand tracking is quite normal. When you're getting to the point where you're identified as being the largest player in the market and you have high amount of brand share, brand tracking is really, really important to understand how your brand is valuable, what your brand stands for, whether it's a medium brand or a premium brand. But again, during COVID and during this change, this digital first economy, brand tracking is becoming even more important still. Challenger brands are giving those established brands a run for their money. So you want to understand where you are in the landscape of all those brands that you're competing against, but you want to have it against metrics like sales performance, revenue growth. It's not important to be a big brand just by itself. You have to correlate that with the revenue, and that then gives you an understanding of your profit. So brand tracking on a challenger is really important, but brand tracking for a large brand is good about retaining and keeping your market share. Now, the last method, which I think is really, really appropriate here, is System 1. Now, what we call the Implicit Association. Okay, System 1 is effectively the instinct in your brain, the reaction which is instinct as opposed to intellectual. The old saying goes that you buy emotionally, you make decisions intellectually. Well, System 1 is the instinct. It's the thing that you react when you are presented with something. So for example, if you see just a small segment of a Coca-Cola bottle, System 1, because a brand has done so well at ingraining itself in our economies and our environment, etc., you can instinctively know what Coca-Cola is. Now, with customers, typically, especially when it's a more complex sales cycle, they're going to be buying intellectually. They're going to be reviewing the features, reviewing the benefits of your product, etc. But ultimately, the goal as an organization is to be an instinct, is to be System 1. Okay, now we measure that, and many researchers out there have the ability to measure what is instinct and what is intellectual. Now, if you can map out where you are intellectually with your customers in the sense of making sure they understand what you do, how you do it, and how you're better, but you interact with them and constantly build that relationship, become emotional as well as commercial, you can then measure the shift from System 2, intellectual, into System 1, which is emotional. And now we have the ability, as other research companies have the ability, to evaluate that. So again, it's about cutting through, telling the truth with data. System 2 is intellectual, it's about consideration. You know, why am I buying it? Is it the right amount of money? Will it do the right things for my business, etc. System 1 is more instinct, it's more internal. And the goal in any brand and any organization is to occupy the System 1 part of the brain when it comes to business and customers. So, tomorrow, where's it going? So one of the things that we have as a platform is the ability to automate loads of these methods so that it basically takes the mundane so they can be more proactive. Already we're seeing within insight teams, both in the FMCG market and the tech market, we're seeing these insight teams becoming more and more proactive. Now, even today that's starting to happen, but what you're going to see furthermore is that actually the data that they're analysing, the predictions they're making are more frequent. So they will be effectively telling you on a daily, in some cases hourly basis, they will be giving you predictions and actions of what you need to do next. Imagine a researcher or an insight team coming to you at the end of the day and evaluating what you've done and giving you the direction to do something different, better, and less costly the next day. This is a really, really powerful thing that the research teams are able to do. Some of the biggest brands in the world now have insight centres where they are basically set up to commission either primary research or secondary research, and the ability to go out to the business and direct them, rather than it was, the insight teams would sit there and wait for these, C-suite or sales directors or marketing directors to come to them. Now they're going out to the business and they're giving them advice and guidance and giving them some of the actions that will hopefully make money and save cost. So coming back to the cost and opportunity, it used to be about buying data or commissioning data through either a big agency, which costs you lots of money, or through some form of questionnaire automation. It used to be about either buying data to look back, and sometimes it was about buying data to create opportunities to size market and go after new areas. Well, the other side now is becoming more important. Now you have a position where the insight teams, and if you're not already interacting with insight companies or not interacting with an agency, this is the time to do it. Because these organizations, these insight organizations, whether they be SaaS-based or whether they be more traditional agencies, have the ability to have real impact on your business cost, save you wasting money, but also looking to rationalize some of your marketing, but also some of your sales activity, ultimately about evaluating and stopping churn, which is something that we all suffer from in the sense of renewals, making sure that dries up. But more importantly is helping the business grow. It's all very well having a very effective sales team, but cost of sale is becoming more blurred in the sense of the channels that you're selling through. So it's really important to make sure you're going after the right target markets at the right times, using the right messaging, because ultimately every pound you're spending opportunity is basically going to decrease your profits. So just to culminate on everything I've said today, there is really, really important, and this is something that I've talked about for tomorrow, but it's happening as well today, is that speed is becoming the big issue right now. Speed is relevant. But ultimately you balance that with the fact that it needs to be substantial, it has to be quality. Because the bigger the risk, the more advice and insight you need on that decision. So typically you would spend a load of money making sure you've got somebody who's validated, who's trusted, who's respected to help you make that decision. So speed, getting it as quickly as possible, substance, the best quality. Well, the last part of that is that these insight people are going through an evolution. They're transforming the way they interact with businesses, and you'll see it more. And if you're not doing it, I advise you to get into it right now. They are empowering the different stakeholders, the different divisions in those companies. And I'm seeing it in the client meetings that I'm having, at the events I'm going to, that these insight people are, one, empowered by SaaS platforms like ours, but they're also empowering other people within the business to be more effective and basically more efficient. So I would strongly suggest, if you're not looking at primary or secondary research, whether it be EPOS data, whether it be questionnaire data or questionnaire insights, whether you are doing scraping off the internet or you're commissioning a company to do it, what I would suggest now is with the MPS and the customer satisfaction, some of the methods, advanced methods like MaxDiff I talked about, I would suggest you get into that now, because the more informed companies, the more agile companies are being much more effective and generating profit, and they're obviously in a change in the way the marketplace is built in the sense of digital first economy. You need to be speedy, you need to have substance, and need to be able to empower all parts of your business and ultimately your consumer, because consumers now are talking about, experience rather than ownership. And if you empower them as a customer and you empower your brand, you'll be very successful. So, culmination of everything I've said today is basically transform and be better. The insight industry is transforming to be better. As organizations and brands, you can do the same. And there's so much data out there, it's actually becoming commoditized. So now what's important is not the data, it's the action that comes from that. And the insight industry is going to help you with that.
Well, that's it for today. A big thank you to all the speakers and to you at home for watching and interacting. I cannot wait for you to join me tomorrow for another great day in the future.